Greetings and citations, my fellow sovereigns. This is the Saturday Night Civics and 70 class for the Vocational Science of Freedom. And tonight we are going to be going over a website called USA-US.info. This site has been up for quite a long period of time, and it was one of the first sites that I came across that really had a lot of good information in a comparison standpoint from right to left as to what is de jure in the Republic and what is de facto as far as the corporate state is concerned. And this is a good continuation from the reading that we did recently from the Zero Hedge article regarding the same subject, because the Zero Hedge article was a good primer, good way to start, had some good information. It was written by someone who clearly hasn't studied this information for as long as most of us have, but that's fine. And so it was a good entry point for people that might not have any idea what's going on in this nation or even around the world right now in regards to how Roman civil law, also known as municipal law, has taken over pretty much every government on the planet by subterfuge, presumption, contracts, pledges, trusts, bonds, oaths, all of it. And how we enter into this inferior form of jurisdiction and end up subjecting ourselves literally by our own volition, even though we don't really understand that we're doing it, to this corporate system of governance. So these readings will take quite a good period of time, because this website, as thorough as it is, it didn't used to be this long. It used to be maybe 2 or 3 pages long, and it was a good start. And now this gentleman, or group of gentlemen, whoever it may be, has now expanded this website much, much deeper with a lot more information. And as well with, as we did with the Zero Hedge article, we can be jumping back and forth when it's necessary to check in with the VSOF timeline doc. I will have the VSOF timeline doc and any other documents that this site will go over. I'll make sure that I put them into the show notes and into the mega file as usual. So if you're listening to this later, you'll definitely have access to that. I'm sorry, my apologies to everybody. I didn't have a chance to put it in before we went live tonight. So to get started, so American governance. Both systems, both original corporate, concurrently exist today. However, the corporate system has been gaining predominance in the last 70 years. Many people, we the people, the sovereignty of the nation, have contracted with the corporate system unknowingly, unintentionally, and or without full disclosure given. Once you learn the difference, you may have to make a decision for yourself, family, and your posterity. That decision may require changes in how you conduct yourself. You will have to undo what has been done to make your sovereign status also known to everyone in the entire world, including every agent and aspect of the corporate state. This information is not taught in the corporate government school system because you are not to know. The elite of the world, known as the one world government corporate system, want and need to have power and control over populations, masses that they call human resources. And in a sense, yes, the world has become one big, gigantic farm. So to begin, on the left-hand side, we have the de jure side of things. So the union of the several states, the states united, the United States and Congress assembled, these United States of America, the United States of America, and the United States of America. The difference is in the capitalization. And then the United States. Now, each one of these has a specific definition as to what it is. The Supreme Court has recognized very clearly in a few cases that there are 3 different and distinct United States. Okay, one of them is the several states of the American Union. That's one way of saying the United States. Another is technically the United States of America, which was the original trust, which was established in the Articles of Confederation, literally in the first article of the Articles of Confederation. And then the last, the United States, is the corporate United States, which was established in 1871 with the District of Columbia Act, which we'll get to in a second. Okay, so that's de jure over here and then de facto over here. The United States, all caps. The United States of America, all caps. And then even the capitalized, the United States of America, all caps. So these are corporations and aspects thereof, and a corporate municipality based out of the District of Columbia. Okay, so as far as time frames are concerned, so when did the Dejure Republic actually get going? Started with the Declaration of Independence, 1776, the Articles of Confederation, 1778, and the Constitution in 1787. Initially, the land was British colonized and then separated into independent free states, which on July 4, 1776 became sovereign states united. Each of those states have their own constitutions. The states are technically nations and countries of themselves. That's why they have governors. The United States is a corporation. That's why it has a president. And before that, even the aspect of it being a trust still is the reason why it had a president, not a governor. Now over to the de facto side. The corporate government started with the Gettysburg Address in 1864 and the incorporation of the District of Columbia by presidential legislature, Act of February 21st, 1871, under the Emergency War Powers Act and the Reconstruction Acts. I'm going to click on some of these links from time to time. I don't know if all of these links work. It appears that this one does. So the Reconstruction Acts, the powers and duties of the military commanders of the districts constituted by the Act of March 2nd, 1867 to provide for a more efficient government of the rebel states considered and determined. So this is the United States Attorney General. The jurisdiction of the military commissioners under that act defined. Summary of the points considered and determined in the former opinion of the Attorney General on this subject. And let me see. I don't think I want to read all of this, but I'm pretty sure this is where it shows the aspect of the war powers and basically how they took the southern states and placed them under military jurisdiction. Yep, that's what this is. Okay, so you guys can read this at your leisure. I'm not going to read through all this. And this is not also the totality of the Reconstruction Acts, because there was more than just this particular document after the Civil War. So, but at least this link works, and I do highly suggest that everybody understand by reading this that the southern states are under military control. And technically, all of the states are now under military control from the standpoint of being in a situation wherein they're running things by martial law, but they're not explaining to anyone that they're doing this. And we got a little bit into that from the Zero Hedge article as well. All right, so to continue. All right, so that's the time frame for when the establishment of each of them happened. Okay, left side. A republic having its beginnings with the colonial resistance against England's tyrannical government. Major opposition against British control began with the Stamp Act, established by British Parliament in March 22nd, 1765. Taxation without representation followed by the Declaratory Act. The Boston Massacre of 1770. The Tea Act passed by Parliament on May 10th, 1773, to save the East India Trading Company from bankruptcy, by the way. You see how the connection between corporations and governments has been around for a very long time, and particularly international corporations like the East India Trading Company. But to continue. Resistance continued with the Quartering Act established by Parliament on June 2nd, 1774, requiring American colonists to provide shelter to British troops and horses when requested. That was pretty much soldiers just barge into your house, start eating all your food, probably do whatnot with your women folk if they felt like it, and there wasn't anything you could do, and if you resisted, they basically shot you. Hence a lost and no longer really used specific part of the Bill of Rights, which is no quartering of troops. Now we don't have to really worry about that unless and until, say, we start seeing blue helmets everywhere. From September 5th to October 25th, 1774, 12 colonies, all but Georgia, sent 56 delegates to Philadelphia to participate in the First Continental Congress. The purpose of the First Continental Congress was to debate and plan a unified response to British policy and actions. On March 25th, 1775, Patrick Henry delivered his "Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death" speech to the Virginia Assembly in Richmond. Various conflicts took place, and blood continued to be shed. On May 10th, 1775, the Second Continental Congress convened in Philadelphia. Delegates from all 13 colonies were present. After signing the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776, and winning the Revolutionary War, which ended with the Paris Peace Treaty, signed September 3rd, 1783, all American colonists became free, sovereign people endowed with the same rights that the King of England had. Now, side note on this, because I don't think he mentions it, there's something also that the king did. Good old King George decided to cancel all the charters that were operating and basically governing the colonies at the time. So when he did that, everybody here instantaneously was free, but they were also knowledgeable as to their rights. And they realized that once the king had let go and they had their own nations, they all became free sovereign people. So it was a republic of sovereigns, but the sovereigns had no one to govern but themselves. And that's where we get the term, the great experiment in self-governance, which is what America had been referred to for a very long period of time, but had been very completely removed from the school system. You do not hear that term any longer. But to continue. Okay, also via the Treaty of Paris in September 1783, King George parted with the Northwest Territory, which was unsettled and not colonized. The Northwest Ordinance was set in place in July of 1787 to govern the territory until such time where the territory became states united with the then 13. And this is Grissom versus Georgia. This is a fairly well-known Supreme Court case. So at the Revolution, sovereignty devolved on the people, and they are truly the sovereigns of the country. But they are sovereigns without subjects and have none to govern but themselves. The citizens of America are equal as fellow citizens and as joint tenants in the sovereignty. Sovereignty is the right to govern a nation or state. Sovereign is the person or persons in whom that resides. In Europe, the sovereignty is generally ascribed to the prince. Here, it rests with the people. There, the sovereignty actually administers the government. Here, never a single instance. Our governors are the agents of the people, and at most, stand in the same relation to their sovereign in which regents in Europe stand to their sovereigns. Their princes have personal powers, dignities, and preeminences. Our rulers have none but official, nor do they partake in the sovereignty otherwise, or in any other capacity than as private citizens. And again, that's Grissom versus Georgia. That's Supreme Court of the United States, February 1794. And the four organic written laws are the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, the Constitution, and then the Northwest Ordinance. And there is some very interesting information for those of you who have never read the Northwest Ordinance, particularly in regards to common law and to courts of record, which are proper sovereign courts under the common law and not under statutes, acts, ordinances, or codes. Okay, so that's the de jure side as to what our republic is. Now, on this side, we have the de facto, a corporation with a legislature that was established with all the apparatus of a district government, created or incorporated by Presidential Legislative Act, February 21st, 1871. 41st Congress, Session 3, Chapter 62, page 419. I will also make sure that I put into the mega folder the actual act which established that corporation. Okay, so on June 20th, 1874, the president, with advice of Senate, abolished and replaced the 1871 government with a commission consisting of 3 persons. A subsequent act approved June 11th, 1878, 20 Stat at Large 102, Chapter 180, was enacted stating that the District of Columbia should remain and continue a municipal corporation, as provided in 2 of the revised statutes relating to said district, brought forward from the Act of 1871. And then there's some various different court cases here, which are in extremely small print, which I'm sure you guys can't see. However, there are links to these cases proving the fact of the District of Columbia's corporate existence. Then farther down, corporate officers. but by the Act of June 11th, 1878, 20 Stat Chapter 180, a permanent form of government for the district was established. It provided, and that the commissioners therein provided for such should be deemed and taken as officers of such corporation. What they did was they set up a municipal government. Now, Roman civil law, the other name for Roman civil law, is called municipal law. And some people consider that a misnomer, but it really isn't, because when you think about how corporate government is run, it really is run through city-states, like the District of Columbia, like the Vatican, like the City of London, right? So these private municipalities can govern you if they see you as being a citizen of their municipality, which is, of course, the presumption that they all use in regards to the District of Columbia. We're all seen as being citizens of the District of Columbia, again, by presumption. So, okay, so the United States is the District of Columbia Incorporated. The United States government is a foreign corporation with respect to a state. That's in Corpus Juris Secundum, Volume 20, Corpus Juris Secundum, subsection 1785. Now, okay, what is Corpus Juris Secundum? Corpus Juris Secundum is probably one of the best set of law books that you can get. And what it is the culmination of American jurisprudence based upon court decisions, and then specifically segregated out by categories. And it's a really good reference book, meaning if you want to find the most important cases about any particular subject and should be used as controlling cases, Corpus Juris Secundum is definitely one of the books you want to have. Okay, so next one down. In United States Code, Title 28, in Section 3002, definitions, it states the following. Under 15, United States means a federal corporation. Many people know about that one, but it's always good to pass on to people who might not believe you. And then to incorporate means to become bigger or to become part of something else. Some people believe it is incorporated with England or the Crown, and the paperwork is filed in Puerto Rico. There's a lot of conjecture about where the United States corporation may be incorporated. I've never been able to track it down. I've never seen any real solid evidence as to if it's here or if it's there. So I'll just leave that as it is. But okay, so this so-called government is an imposter, posing or masquerading as the original government. Some call it the insurgent governmental system. As Charles Evans Hughes, governor of New York and twice appointed justice of the Supreme Court, said, the Constitution is whatever the Supreme Court says it is. This is as frank an assessment of the true situation as you'll ever get from a government official. George Bush said practically the same thing when he declared that the Constitution is just a piece of paper. The Northwest Ordinance shows why the federal government has no legal jurisdiction over any territory but that which is owned by the United States of America. The fact is, the Constitution, for all practical purposes, annuls the Declaration of Independence. And that's a quote from Lawrence Berg. I don't necessarily agree with that, because the Constitution for the United States of America was kind of set up by a false flag called Shays' Rebellion, which I don't necessarily want to get into right now. But when you talk about what's truly de jure and what is truly correct as far as a government is concerned, I just always go back to what Jefferson said. He said that the just powers of government are derived by the consent of the governed. So if there's no consent, then there can't be any just powers. So you have to consent to be governed over, if you will. And how the corporate government does that is by contract, by licensure, by registration, and things like that. In the constitutional republic, the way that the government would rule over you really doesn't exist unless you are acting in consideration of like a corporation, or if you are, again, having some sort of contract with the government. Otherwise, the only thing that rules over you in the constitutional republic is a 25-member grand jury. That's pretty much it. Only a 25-member grand jury can indict another sovereign. But even then, it's not really the government. It's still technically the people versus, Mr. Criminal, whatever they may have done. And they still have all of the rights to face their accuser, have due process, all the stuff that we know should exist in the constitutional republic, but tends not to exist on the de facto side. Okay, so let's get into what actually is de facto and what's de jure. Having a de jure form of government. De jure means of right, legitimate, lawful, by right, and just title, by law. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition. A de facto government. In fact, indeed, actually, a state of affairs, but is illegal or illegitimate by equity and not by law. Is not constitutional. Thus, an officer, king, or government de facto is in actual possession, but by usurpation or without lawful title. And that's basically what's been going on since, as I said, the Reconstruction Acts. The standpoint that they're administering everything and considering everything to be under military control, but it's by usurpation and without lawful title. So that's the clear difference between de jure and de facto. And another way to talk about de facto is kind of the same way you'd talk about, say like the mob, like protects you, right? They're not a de jure form of protection. They're a de facto form of protection, meaning if you don't keep paying them, well, they'll probably stop protecting you from themselves, which is very much how corporate government works as well. And then how the de jure is actually created, it's created by us, the sovereigns, and how the de facto is created, it's created by merchant bankers, and their cohorts by acts of treason. They also forced the South and other states to secede. President Lincoln fell into their scheme and went along for a while until he changed his mind, and then somebody put a bullet in the back of his head. And then also this martial law government, actual martial rule, is a fiction managing civil affairs. So, yeah, that's the difference. So everything regarding the law merchant is how they have been tricking us into giving them constant authority over what we're doing. And again, a lot of that's by licensing and by contracts. Okay. All right. So introduction on the de jure side. Philadelphia is the capital. The Articles of Confederation were agreed to by the United States and Congress assembled on November 5th, 1777, and were ratified March 1st, 1781. From the time of the Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776, to the time of the Articles of Confederation, there was a space of time of 16 months and 11 days. During this period of time, the several nations, states, countries were sovereign unto themselves as relates to foreign earthly powers. There was an outstanding debt of 17 million silver lira from French banks over 21 separate occasions, all due on December 1st, 1789. Therefore, a bankruptcy charter had to be drafted. On September 17th, 1787, 12 state delegates approved the Constitution. The states have now become constitutors. You can look up that word, and I highly suggest that you do. Oh, never mind. It's right here. Constitutor. In the civil law, one who, by simple agreement, becomes responsible for the payment of another's debt. So what happened here? This has always been about shuffling the debt from one thing to another thing to another thing. So they shuffled the debt into the Articles of Confederation. They said, okay, this is how we're going to deal with you, meaning anybody else out there, meaning any other nation out there. So we, the colonies, will deal with any other nation out there as a collective. That's how they started off their little journey. Then a little bit later, Articles of Confederation, they said, well, that's not exactly working out the way we like it to. And then they had this little thing that was a false flag, basically, called Shays' Rebellion. And then there was a rampant rush to push through and get a constitution created for the federal side, which is, of course, what a lot of people didn't want, particularly Patrick Henry, who didn't even go to the convention because he said, "I smelt a rat," famously quoted. And several others also did not go for the same reason. They didn't want to be part of the fraud and illegality of the whole situation. But what were the merchant bankers and the attorneys doing? They were making sure that they would be able to keep the nation under debt. So just keep that in the back of your mind when we're thinking about all of these dates in history, that it's this perpetuation of always keeping a nation or other people in debt. That's really been the goal the entire time, including one of the major reasons why the colonies broke away from England to begin with, because they weren't allowed to create their own monetary system. They had to borrow everything from the Bank of England at interest, and that was not going to be tolerated anymore. So that's how it started. That's how it kept perpetuating, and technically, everyone, that's how it's still going. But to continue. All right, so the states were now liable for the debt owed to the king, but the people of America were not. The people are not a party to the Constitution because it was never put to them for a vote. Just the states are on the hook. But that was a way for, again, the international banking cartels and the rest of the attorneys to say, well, we got to get them all on the hook somehow. Well, that was what they did. They pushed it through in a federal constitution. The judge in the Paddleford case stated, quote, "But indeed, no private person has a right to complain by suit in court on the ground of a breach of the Constitution. The Constitution, it is true, is a compact, but he is not a party to it. The states are the parties to it, and they may complain. If they do, they are entitled to redress, or they may waive their right to complain." And that looks like Georgia case. Doesn't look like I can see a date on that, so not exactly sure when that case took place. But yeah, so the states got together, and the states said, okay, then we're going to give up a certain amount of the rights that were vested to us, and we're going to all squish them together in this federal power, this federal central puppet that sits there. Well, like I said, a lot of the original revolutionary leaders said, well, you know what? Something's not quite right here. And not to put too fine a point on it, the most famous revolutionaries weren't even in the fucking country. Okay. I think Ben was still in France doing his thing. Adams was either still in France with Ben, or he'd been transferred to either the Netherlands, or he'd been transferred to England because John bounced around a little bit. And I think Jefferson was also in France for a period of time because they were all being delegates to, I guess the better word would be plenipotentiaries, to create and set up relationships with other countries. Got a new country. Okay, you have to go figure out what you're going to have treaties with and trade relations and all this good stuff. Well, that's what they were doing over in Europe. So they weren't even around for this. They had no part of it. They knew what was going on from very slow communications across the entire Atlantic. But seeing as how slowly news tended to travel across that big puddle, they didn't really get a lot of information. So this kind of happened without them. So, yeah. If you want to know a really good breakdown of the specificity of what I'm talking about regarding the Articles, well, the Articles of Confederation, and then getting transformed into the Constitution, specifically the kind of the ruse, if you will, of how the Constitution was set up. You can go to the VSOF website on YouTube, and I think exactly like what I plugged into it. It should be, you should be able to find it on the Constitution. Like if you just typed in the Constitution, I believe I put it under. It's definitely in one of the self-governance. It's definitely in the self-governance playlist. I think it's back farther. And anyway, it's a short snippet of video from a gentleman named Art Capozzi, and he breaks down how the federal Constitution literally came into existence from the false flag of Shays' Rebellion to how many of the delegates actually showed up at the convention, and then how many of them actually stuck around. And there are some stunning numbers in the truth of what happened. It's put out that the Constitution is this great thing and it's wonderful and it all went smoothly. No, it didn't. Not even close. And I highly suggest that everybody go listen to that particular little short snippet of a class and get that history, because it is stunning. Okay, so back to the article. So the articles established a sovereign nation of people, but all constitutions are bankrupt charters or compacts. President Andrew Jackson paid the debt in 1832 while discussing the bank renewal bill to a delegation of bankers. He said, quote, "You are a den of vipers and thieves. I intend to rout you out." And then as I recall, he slammed the table with his fist. "And by the eternal God, I will rout you out." Jackson knew what they were. He understood the history of banking. He understood that they shouldn't have any place or any grip whatsoever over we the people. And then after Jackson did that, it started what was called the Jacksonian banking era, which was a very, very prosperous time in America, and which you had state banks and state chartered banks. And there was no central bank, meaning that there was no central debt, and the government wasn't just automatically going into debt constantly, which is, of course, what they're doing now, to pay for anything. So, and yes, as Spectre brings up, the good old USA was turning a surplus as far as what they were creating, and we were exporting a lot of products out of the United States. And of course, in the midst of that time, and then afterwards, obviously, as well, was the Industrial Revolution, of which America was the single greatest force to be reckoned with when it came to invention, mechanization, energy, power, railroads, all of it. Infrastructure, bridges, telegraph lines, and then eventually, obviously, electric lines. So that wouldn't have happened, I'm sure, had the Second Bank of the United States continued and Jackson had not been there. Okay, so to continue, the Articles of Confederation are still in operation. Quote, he, Patrick Henry, boycotted the Constitutional Convention of 1787 because, as he so eloquently put it, "I smelt a rat," and suspected the worst, that the independent colonies that had thrived for over a century were to be herded under one consolidated government, a vast government apparatus founded not on liberty, but on bureaucratic dreams and monarchists and mercantilists like Alexander Hamilton. Thank goodness that bastard got what he deserved. Thank you, Aaron Burr. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government for their own betterment. Declaration of Independence. On a side note, it could be debated that it wasn't Thomas Jefferson that wrote the Declaration of Independence, but actually good old common sense, which it was stated that most likely that Jefferson was charged with creating a committee to write the Declaration of Independence, and then he sought an author. And he did. And that author was probably the same author as wrote Common Sense, because Jefferson never used certain words in his writings that were in the Declaration of Independence. But anyway, I digress. All right, to continue. Samuel Adams said, "When the people fear the government, they have tyranny. When the government fears the people, they have freedom." True. Many governments are established by good people having good intentions, but certain men with bad intentions or another agenda, like international Luciferian fucks, get into government office by some means, lawful or otherwise, find loopholes, revise government and its laws to suit their needs and agenda, and build an empire within government itself. Through deceit and lies, and through the absence of truth, gain power and control over the people. extracting the people's well-earned money from the people's labor to finance and increase the empire to such an extent that it would seem difficult for people to rise up against it. As we're seeing now. This is now what people tend to refer to now these days as the deep state. What you should really refer to it as is global communism under Luciferian global agenda, perpetuated by all various different kinds of fuckery. But to continue, quote, apathetic and dependent Americans today are unsuspectingly going into bondage unless America wakes up, close quote. Jack Slevkov, 2006. Okay, so, and then the last part of it, as far as the de jure is concerned, if you want to consider the Constitution being de jure. All right, so the Constitution for the United States of America, not known or referenced to as the organic Constitution. This Constitution established a central government with limited powers to do the will of the people. Well, technically it was to do the will of the stuff the states didn't want to do, but put that aside for a second. Its purpose was to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and I have issues with promoting the general welfare, but and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Okay. The Constitution, a bankrupt compact, designates and limits the powers of the newly established central government and restricts its venue to a district not exceeding 10 square miles, and areas purchased for forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. The organic Constitution was created in 1787, adopted in 1789, and amended in 1791. The Constitution is not an instrument for the government to restrain the people. It is an instrument for the people to restrain the government. Patrick Henry. Okay. That's Dejure Republic, all that. Now, on to the introduction for the de facto side. Certain members of Congress created the District of Columbia, D.C., from portions of two states, Virginia and Maryland, Virgin Mary, get it? To form a more perfect union as the new United States. U.S. titles and codes in their awkward definitions called D.C., the United States. In case anybody hasn't, gone and watched the previous classes on the reading of the good old Zero Hedge article. I talked quite a bit in there about this. And one of the most important things that you can bring forward to anybody who doesn't believe that D.C. is the United States and so on and so forth is that you can prove it in state statutes as well. Because in all the state statutes, you'll see, or at least there hasn't been one that I found that doesn't say this, you'll see the term in this state. So a person may not do XYZ in this state. Okay. You figure that they're referring to the state. Well, they're not. They're actually referring to DC. Because if you go into the definitions and you say, what the hell is in this state? It'll say, that's the District of Columbia. And you say, what the fuck? Are you kidding me? No, they're not kidding you. And that's how they can redefine words within the statutes themselves. So if you ever want to actually deconstruct and figure out what the hell an attorney actually is trying to pull over on you, well, you have to go look at the definitions within the statutes themselves. Doesn't mean that they're going to be the definitions in Black's or Bouvier's or any other law dictionary that you pick up. No, they can change them. And sometimes they can change it so bad that they simply confuse the living shit out of you. Like that DC is the United States and the term in this state means DC. Yeah. So as a word of advice from your grandmother and your grandfather, read the small print. It's important. Okay. All right. To continue. The new United States includes states such as District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Guam, American Samoa, the Virginia Islands, and the Northern Mariana Islands. It does not include the 50 states united. That is in Title 26, Section 7701, definitions A, 9, and 10. Also in 40 United States Code, Title 42, Section 405, 2C, and I believe that's 7. So you see, that's what the United States is, people. The District of Columbia and its little possessions, which is what those things are, by the way. All right, next one. All titles of the United States Code, USC, are strictly meant for the United States and none of the 50 states of the Union. Each of the 50 states have their own constitutions and laws. See Hepburn versus Elsie, 2 Cranch 452, and John Barron versus the mayor and city of Baltimore. Oh, that one's fascinating. 32 U.S. 243 in 1833. These last 2 cases clearly state that the United States is not the 50 states of the Union. And again, remember what I said earlier about that the Supreme Court has decided that there are 3 different United States, and they just named 2 of them. All right, all rules come from the District of Columbia, which is run by the Gnostic priesthood of the undisclosed mystery Babylon, also known as, I would say, the high priest class of the merchant guild, which works out of the city of London through the Lincoln's Inn. I always forget the name of the other inn, of course, and then the Inner Temple and Middle Temple. Those are the places where this priest class came from, where it was birthed out of, where it continues to fester from, is the city of London, folks. So just remember that. Attorneys are your mortal enemy. All right, to continue. Masonic rule. From some of the Masonic symbols is found in the layout of the district streets, the Washington Monument, obelisk, the Pentagon, and on the back of the $1 Federal Reserve. Note, as we saw with the Zero Hedge article, there are 3 obelisks in the 3 city-states which run the planet: D.C., the Vatican, and the City of London. D.C. layout in $1. You guys, we could probably click on this just for a second if it takes it to us. Okay, yep, here we go. So many companies use the pyramid with their logos. 13 leaves in the olive branch, 13 bars and stripes on the shield, 13 arrows in a right claw, 13 letters in E pluribus unum, 13 stars in the green crest above, 13 granite stones in the pyramid, 13 letters in Anet Coeptus. So it should also be noted that the eagle has 32 feathers in the right wing, but 33 in its left wing. The 32 feathers representing the number of ordinary degrees of the Scottish Rite, and the 33 feathers representing the 33rd of Freemasonry. So, pretty much in your face regarding the symbology. Oh, yes, and don't forget good old little Mr. Owl in the upper right-hand corner, right here in this little loopy-doop. If you get out a magnifying glass, that's probably the only way you're going to be able to see that little bastard. And, of course, that's, part and parcel of Moloch and what they sacrifice children to. So, anyway, if you want to get into all the symbology and the numerology of that, do so. DC layout is far more complex, and I don't even want to start down that path. But there are hundreds of connections regarding how DC is laid out to prove that this is all Luciferian filth. All of it. Okay? So, as it says here, the best place to hide something is in full view. Exactly. Columbia is a name for goddess of creation, war and destruction, more known as the goddess of death and pain. She is derived from the imaginary wife of Nimrod, Semiramis, if I pronounce that correctly, and Queen of Babylon. The statue on the top of the Capitol building, called the Statue of Freedom, is actually Persephone, meaning she who destroys the light. Isn't that wonderful? She is the queen of the underworld. She is crowned with pentacles. Pentagrams start with 5 points. When someone stands on something, it is usually an indication of ownership. Therefore, she owns the facility she stands upon. Although the dome at the top of the Capitol building was not finished until 1868, the final installation of the statue on top of the dome took place on December 2nd, 1863. The original Capitol building without the dome was completed in 1826. Columbia and Persephone are seen as other statues around Washington, D.C. Not to mention that's what the Statue of Liberty is too, folks. Some of the Gnostic priesthood include the Illuminati, Skull and Bone Society, Hospitallers, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, Knights of the Round Table, Odd Fellows. I don't want to even get into those bastards. Society of Jesuits, Jesuit priesthood, Club of Rome, Knights Templar, Freemasons, Scottish Rite Temple, York Rite Temple, Shriners. Yes, those guys too. Intertemple Bar, which that again is the Bar Association. International Temple Bar Association. Barristers in Zionists, Jesuits, Jesuit Brotherhood, Milner Group, and that includes Milner's Kindergartner, Milner's Roundtable, the entire Rhodes crowd, everything that Rhodes created, including the Rhodes Scholars. The Times crowd, the Souls Group, Cliveden Set, I don't know what that one is. The Society of the Elect, the Society of the Elect, E-L. L is Saturn, people. That's why you get elected. And that's why the Saturnalian cult, their color is black. And that's why judges wear black robes. The Association of Helpers, Junta of Three, also don't know what that one is. Secret Society of Cecil Rhodes, Chatham House Crowd, Commonwealth of Nations, Royal Institute of International Affairs, Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg Group, Council on Foreign Relations, Magistrates, and Bar Attorneys. You could spend 10 years of your life picking apart each and every one of those filthy Luciferian organizations. I personally would tell you not to bother. Simply know what they are. If you want to get a little bit of information on them, just kind of realize that they're all out to get you and maybe where they come from, so you have a little bit of organizational idea as to how this planet is being controlled. But I would not, in good conscience, bother to go down and do any sort of deep dive into any of their filth. It really doesn't get you anywhere. It just confuses the hell out of you for the most part regarding what they follow, what gods they bow to, and why. But I'll just leave it at that. Okay. All right, to continue. Since 1873, the global elite has held secret meetings in the ancient redwood forest of Northern California. Members of the so-called Bohemian Club include former presidents Eisenhower, Nixon, and Reagan. The Bush family maintains a strong involvement. Each year at Bohemian Grove, members of this all-male quote-unquote club put on red, black, and silver robes and conduct an occult ritual wherein they worship a giant stone owl, sacrificing a human being in effigy to what they call the Great Owl of Bohemia. That's Alex Jones information, but yes, you can definitely see the pictures at Bohemian Grove as to the fact that the owl is where it is, and also that was part and parcel of what was on the $1. This little guy up in this corner, yep, that's him. Same owl. And that, by the way, as far as printing this stuff on your money that you use, that's called the ritualistic mocking of the victim. That's what all these fuckers do. Okay? It's also what the Georgia Guidestones was all about, the ritualistic mocking of the victim, until somebody decided to take some dynamite or C4 or whatever they used to blow the thing up. Good for them. Okay. And yes, again, small owl in the upper right-hand corner. Okay, so it's getting on to the hour. We got about 3 minutes left. So I'll just finish this off. All right. So, one, we have the Constitution for the United States of America. That is the correct style of the document, the de jure one. The de facto one is just the Constitution of the United States. The original organic Constitution was adopted by the corporation as its bylaws. Okay. The original 13th Amendment, which I'm sure if you click on the link, we can read it for a second, but was replaced, and the other amendments is added by fraud. So the original 13th Amendment is the missing title of nobility, which states here, if any citizen of the United States shall accept, claim, receive, or retain any title of nobility or honor, or shall without the consent of Congress, accept and retain any present pension, office, or emolument of any kind whatever, from any emperor, king, prince, or foreign power, such person shall cease to be a citizen of the United States. That means a citizen of one of the states of the Union, that United States, and shall be incapable of holding any office of trust or profit under them or either of them. Now, if you want to bother to go read the Articles of Confederation, this entire thing is stated verbatim in the Articles of Confederation. Is there any wonder why they wanted to push through a false flag and put it in the Constitution for the United States of America and try and replace the Articles of Confederation and didn't want anybody to deal with it anymore? Well, it might be because of these exact words right here, which again were passed in the 13th Amendment, and it was ratified, and there's plenty of proof of that. Not only on this site, but I also have it in copious amounts in actual older books where you can literally see it printed. So 13th Amendment was ratified It's still in full force and effect on the de jure side. And the de facto wants you to completely forget about it. Because guess what? All the attorneys, well, I shouldn't say all of them, a lot of the attorneys are what's called esquires. An esquire is one title of nobility below a knight. So every single esquire holds oath and allegiance to the fucking crown. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah. And you think they're going to represent your best interests in court, huh? No. They're there to fleece you. They're there to sell you down the river and don't give a flying fuck about you, whatever, in the least bit. That's why when you hire an attorney, they'll never tell you that they'll guarantee anything. That's just all what the other black robe priest of El wants to do to you. And I'll take my 33 and 3%, and they'll take the other 3 and 33%, and you'll be left with nothing. How do you like that? Now, there's good goddamn reason people wanted to get rid of attorneys and make sure that no one was holding foreign allegiance to the crown. All right, the 14th Amendment, also de facto side, was not ratified, as we covered ad nauseum in the previous readings. Again, also never ratified. I did whole classes on the 14th Amendment and different parts of which, and I'm pretty sure if I didn't put it into the mega folder for the classes that were in the covering of the Zero Hedge article, I will make sure to put all of the documents for every single thing that's covered in this website in the mega folder. I promise you, because I want this to be a very concise and complete layout of classes. However long it's going to take us to do these. Might take 4 weeks. Spectre thought it might take 6 because he said he got to about 6 hours and he wasn't even quite done finished reading through it. And we're going to make sure that we go through the documents, or at least I provide them and tell you where to find them, so that you have a chance to read them yourself, prove to yourself that what is stated herein is correct, and maybe not 100% complete, because, maybe not all of us have all of the answers. I don't think there's every single fact laid down in this website of all of the fraud that has happened to us, to the peoples of this continent, and what's still happening to this day. It's not all here. Are you ever going to get all of it? Probably not. Would I even want to have or know every single piece of it? Not really. All I'm interested in is making sure that we get out of this side of it and get onto that side of it. Make sure that we're on the de jure and leave everything regarding the de facto. And your first step in doing that is making sure that you get your vocational science of freedom status docs done. Because what our process does is remove you from this side and put you on this side permanently. So this side can't keep taking their pound of flesh out of you. Okay? So you can leave Mr. Merchant where you found him on this side. Okay, so that's gotten us up to an hour. We'll just have to remember that we're at Republic versus Democracy here. And so if anybody has any questions, all of you are always welcome to ask them either just in the comment section on any platform that you may be watching this, or you can join the Vocational Science of Freedom at our Revolt server and also in classes on Mega. And to do so, go to vocationalscienceoffreedom.wordpress.com, and there you can download our welcome package. And if you'd like the links for our website and all of the rest of the locations where to find us are in the show notes as well, as they are also in the About section in both on Rumble and also on YouTube and in Odyssey as well. So you just click on VSOF, go to About here, and then you can have the website right here. Like I said, it'll take you to the welcome package where you are free to join us on our Revolt server. And no, Revolt does not mean that we're just on Revolt. It just simply means that that is a program that is literally called Revolt. And from it, it works very much like Discord and Gilded. But it's not run by the CCP, and they're not going to be stealing your information, which is why we use it. Okay, so with that, we didn't get much into the timeline doc, but that's okay. We'll cover stuff over the next class when we get into it, okay? But you guys are welcome to download the timeline doc and go through it as you will. All right, so with that, we will have Wednesday night roundtable. Wednesday night roundtables are only for those who have been vetted to join the VSOF, which is just finish up your welcome package, send it in. You can feel free to join in on the Wednesday night roundtables. And now we record the roundtables, but we no longer broadcast them and we no longer post them. So we just keep it private for us in case there's anything that anybody wants to talk about regarding their court cases or things that have come up, or you just simply want to vent to a bunch of other sovereign Americans about how you're pissed off and why you want to take heads. That's fine too. Totally fine on Wednesday night. All right, everyone. So with that, thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. Hope you learned something. See you on Wednesday. And until next time, as always, stay safe and stay sovereign.